Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something pretty common in Rails, actually.
Yeah.
How do you handle really, really large data sets efficiently with active record?
Right. It's a classic problem. Your app runs fine, then suddenly you hit scale and whoosh.
Everything grinds to a halt because you're trying to load,
Ah,
millions of records into memory?
exactly. That's generally not going to work well. A recipe for disaster, really.
So, okay, our deep dive today is focused on two specific active record methods that help with this.
Mm-hmm.
Find each and find the batches.
Mm.
And the mission really is to figure out when you should use which one. For performance, sure, but also just for cleaner code when you're dealing with, well, significant amounts of data.
Yeah, makes sense. So, should we start with Findich?
Yeah, let's unpack that one first. Conceptually, it feels like it's just looping through records one by one, right?
It does, yeah. The way you write the code gives that impression. You get a block, and inside that block, you work with a single record.
Like the example, user.findeach. The batch size 1,000.
Yeah.
Do user.send weekly email in. Looks simple. You get a user, you send an email.
Precisely. But the clever part is what's happening underneath.
Ah, the behind the scenes.
Right. Even though you're processing one user object at a time in your Ruby code, Active Record isn't actually making one database query per user. That would be terribly inefficient.
Okay, so what is it doing?
It's fetching those records from the database in batches. By default, it grabs a batch of 1,000 records.
Got it. So it loads the 1,000, yields them one by one to your block. Then when those are done, it fetches the next 1,000, and so on.
Exactly. Think of it like efficiently managing inventory. You bring out boxes from the backstore database, but only put one item on the shelf in memory for your block at a time.
So the big win here is memory. You're not holding that massive array of all users in memory. It's great for operations on individual records.
Perfect for that, yeah. Sending emails, updating a specific counter on each record, running some logic unique to that user or item, and the code stays very readable.
Okay, that makes sense for individual processing. But what if you actually need to work with a group of records together?
Well, that's where finding batches comes into play. It's sort of the next logical step.
Right, the name kind of gives it away. How does it work differently in practice?
So instead of yielding individual records one by one, find batches yields the entire batch as an array to your block.
Okay, so the block variable is now an array of users, not a single user.
Correct. The code would look something like user.findBatches, batch size 1,000, do users.each, user.sends weekly email, and end. See, users is the array.
I see. And you probably do something more interesting inside than just iterating again, right? What's the advantage?
Well, yeah, you could just iterate, but the real power comes when the operation naturally applies to the group. Think about bulk updates or inserts into another table.
Oh, right. Like if you wanted to update a status for a whole chunk of users at once.
Exactly. Or maybe generating a report, like a CSV export. You could process and write out rows in batches. Or doing some kind of grouped analytics, calculating an average or sum for that specific batch.
That makes sense. It avoids loading all records, but still lets you work with meaningful chunks. What about performance between the two? Is one faster?
It depends. Sometimes fetching records in larger batches with finding batches can mean fewer round trips to the database compared to the potentially more numerous smaller fetches implicitly done by Findich, even though it batches too. So for certain bulk operations, finding batches might offer a slight performance edge.
Light?
Yeah, might. If the work you do per record is very lightweight, the overhead of managing the batch array and finding batches could, balance things out or even make Findich slightly simpler or faster. It's not always clear-cut.
Okay, good nuance. Now, are there any traps or things to watch out for with either of these common mistakes?
Absolutely. A really crucial one is data consistency. Both methods work by querying batches based on IDs, usually. If records are being added, updated, or especially deleted while your Findich or find batches loop is running,
Uh-oh.
yeah, you can get unpredictable results. You might process a record twice or skip one entirely, particularly if the deletion affects the IDs being used for the next batch query.
Okay, so probably best run these during quieter periods or ensure the data isn't changing underneath you. What about the order?
That's the other big one. Neither Findich nor Fing batches guarantees any specific processing order by default. It usually relies on the primary key, typically id.
So if the order matters for my logic,
You must add an explicit .order clause before you call Findich or find in batches, like
you're right.
.order.id if you want primary key order, or maybe .order.create that. Don't forget that.
Right. Crucial. Okay, let's try and recap then. Quick decision guide. When do I reach for Findich?
Use find each when your task involves processing each record pretty much independently. You want clean code focused on the single item, and you want maximum memory efficiency per record. Think individual emails, single attribute updates.
Got it. And find in batches.
Reach for find batches when you genuinely need to operate on the whole group, the whole batch, at once. Bulk operations, grouped calculations, exporting chunks. It also gives you that potential sometimes for performance optimization via fewer DB queries.
So the core difference boils down to find each gives you one item at a time, conceptually, even though it fetches batches.
Right, it handles the batching for you and yields single.
And whereas finding batches just hands you the whole batch array directly.
Exactly, you get the GROOT. The choice really hinges on what your operation needs to do. Match the tool to the job for efficiency and clarity.
This has been super helpful. It's easy to fall into the trap of just using all or loading too much, but these batching methods are really essential tools for scalable Rails apps.
They absolutely are. And, it makes you think these general concepts of batch processing, breaking down large tasks,
Yeah.
how might these ideas apply elsewhere, even outside of Rails, whenever you're faced with processing a huge amount of data, maybe from APIs, files, whatever? It's a fundamental pattern.